More stage setting for the Gog of Magog invasion. Hey guys, Britt here. Welcome to End Times Bible Prophecy, where we're seeing more stage setting for the Gog of Magog war that we read about in Ezekiel chapters 38 and 39. The Bible tells us this is a surprise invasion of Israel that will take place in the latter days, and the alliance that's described in those chapters has never existed in human history until now. Right now, we're seeing it come together right in front of our eyes. So in today's video, we're going to talk about the latest developments in the formation of this alliance. We're going to talk about why these passages describe the modern-day nation-state of Israel, and then we're going to look at all the ties that are being formed between the nations that are in that alliance right here in our day and time. It's just another sign of the times in which we live. But first, in case you missed it, we put this article out yesterday over on the Substack at brittgillette.substack.com. It's titled, "We're About to Move One Step Closer to the Revelation 13 Beast System. Once bank runs hit the panic phase, the digital prison will arrive." And this is talking about stress that we're seeing emerge in the banking system right now. We're seeing these stresses emerge. I believe this is going to lead to bank runs in due time, and then eventually into central bank digital currency, tokenized assets, and digital IDs. So we walk through what's happening right now and what's going to happen next. So make sure to check that out over at brittgillette.substack.com. I'll put a link directly to this article in the description for those that are on YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey. You can easily find that. So back to what we're talking about. What sort of stage setting are we seeing in regard to the Gog of Magog war in Ezekiel chapters 38 and 39? Well, let's start with this right here. This is from Real Clear World. It says the window to counter Russia in Syria is closing. So if you remember, we had a revolution in Syria in December of 2024. So we saw a regime change in Syria. Prior to that, Russia and Iran had a significant presence in Syria, propping up the Bashar Assad regime, and now that's not the case. So the question was, is Russia going to be booted out of Syria as a result of that? And what we're finding out is that is not the case. So this says Russia is quietly reconsolidating influence in Syria. The fall of Moscow-backed Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad almost a year ago ushered in a once-in-a-generation opportunity to reshape the balance of power in the Middle East in favor of the United States. This window may be closing. Failure to counter Russia and Syria will cost the West globally. And of course, it's all an opinion piece that's put together, but it really speaks to what we're seeing happen in the Middle East in regard to the key players in the Gog of Magog alliance, one of which is Russia. One of the primary players in this is Russia. And this invasion comes from the north. Now, the uttermost north, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get further into this video, but Syria is to the direct north of Israel. So this is really significant, I believe, that we have Russia having a presence to Israel's immediate north. But this says, this month, Vladimir Putin hosted Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara for the first time since the fall of Assad. Al-Shara seeks to redefine relations with Moscow. For Russia, Syria is important because of its strategic location on the eastern Mediterranean. It allows power projection into the Middle East, Africa, NATO's southern flank, along with all of southern Europe. With Russia's war raging in Ukraine, access to the Mediterranean is a crucial logistics route. The spotlight on Russia and Syria has largely fallen off, but Russia's presence there is slowly reconsolidating. Moscow retains access to Syria's military bases, and Tartus and Kaminim, I can never pronounce that correctly, and may repurpose them for additional tasks such as sending humanitarian aid to Africa. So here we have these critical Russian military bases located in Syria, providing access to the Mediterranean Sea. This is critical to Russia's ability to project power in parts of the globe, and there was a threat that they would lose this following the fall of the Assad regime. But that is not the case, because as we read here, it says al-Shara confirmed at the meeting with Putin that he will honor past deals made with Russia, which confirms that Russian bases are safe. So we see Russia being able to maintain that military presence in Syria, which is critical, I believe, to setting the stage for the Ezekiel 38 and 39 fulfillment. What else do we see? Well, we have this from the Daily Saba. It says, why Russia can't afford to lose Syria. And it says, Russia's grip on Syria remains firm even as leadership shifts in Damascus. Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara's visit to Moscow in October, we're in October, reaffirms that the Kremlin has no intention of loosening its hold on one of its most vital Middle Eastern allies. When al-Shara met with President Putin in Moscow, it was a moment of quiet recalibration between two men who, not long ago, stood on opposite sides of a brutal war. Al-Shara, who led the rebel alliance that ousted Bashar al-Assad in December 2024, arrived seeking to rebuild bridges with a country that once helped his enemies survive. Despite that painful history, both leaders now understand that cooperation, however uneasy, is essential for Syria's recovery and Russia's continued influence in the region. Al-Shara's rise to power was largely backed by Turkey. And again, Turkey is another key member of the Gog of Magog alliance we read about in Ezekiel chapters 38 and 39. It says al-Shara's rise in power was largely backed by Turkey, which has long played a nuanced role in the Syrian conflict and supported Syrian society in the face of brutality, famine, and poverty. Ankara has positioned itself as a regional power broker, balancing relations with both the West and Moscow while pursuing its own security and economic interest. Al-Shara's pragmatic foreign policy seems to echo this balance, one that prioritizes regional stability, reconstruction, and reduced Iranian dominance in Syria. This convergence gives Moscow a reason to engage with the new leadership, even if it means adjusting old loyalties. So guys, here we see, again, two major players involved in Syria, to Israel's immediate north, two major players from the Gog of Magog alliance, Russia and Turkey, who are now on the same side, whereas before they were on opposite sides. And guys, this directly speaks to the time in which we live, because again, when we look at Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 8, it's clear this is speaking about the modern day nation state of Israel and an invasion that will occur then. It says, after many days you will be called to arms. In future years you will invade a land that has recovered from war, whose people were gathered from many nations to the mountain of Israel, which had long been desolate. They have been brought out from the nations, and now all of them live in safety. So this is a description of the modern-day nation-state of Israel, where exiles have been called from all over the earth back into the land. We've had essentially continuous war and conflict since 1948. We see that to this day, but we've talked about how what we've been seeing in Gaza and with the conflict with Hezbollah and Iran, how this could lead to a state of peace, an elimination of the existential threats on Israel's immediate border, and thus create these conditions where it looks like we have people who have recovered from war and are living in safety. We're going to talk a bit more about tranquility as we go through this as well, because this is exactly what we're seeing. We see this Ezekiel 38 and 39 is a description of an invasion that will take place against today's modern day nation state of Israel, and it tells us the times in which we're living because it explicitly says in the latter days in those passages. It also says this right here in Ezekiel 38:15 and Ezekiel 39:2. It says, "You will come from your homeland in the distant north with your vast cavalry and your mighty army, and I will turn you around and drive you toward the mountains of Israel, bringing you from the distant north." So we have in two occasions it's talking about the distant north. We have this map here. I believe Lamb and Lion Ministries put this together. I think it's a great illustration, very vivid with its colors and showing where these nations that are described in Ezekiel 38 and 39 currently reside today. And if we look to the uttermost north of Jerusalem, what do we see? Well, we see Russia and Moscow specifically. So I believe, again, the key player in this alliance is Russia. But look at the other players. So we have Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan. We have all of these nations have long been allied with Russia. We also see Turkey there. And we've seen increased ties between Turkey and Russia in recent years. I mean, even just 20 years ago, people were saying, well, Turkey's part of NATO. Its purpose is to provide a counterbalance, is to stop Russia from invading Europe, right? So why would they join an alliance with Russia? They are part of the West. They're trying to join the European Union, all of these things. But we've seen with the rise of Erdogan in Turkey, we've seen this movement not completely away from the West, but more toward Russia. And then we've seen Russia and Iran building their ties. Again, just 4 or 5 years ago, people were saying, well, how is Afghanistan part of this coalition? The United States, Israel's #1 ally, occupies the nation of Afghanistan. How will they be part of this invasion? Well, now we see the United States abandoned Afghanistan and the Taliban came back into power, and the Taliban is not friendly toward Israel. And then we see Sudan and Libya both have ports of vital interest to Russia, and Russia has been building ties with them as well. So we see all of these ties in the headlines. If we just look around, here we go, just from October, Russia and Iran deepen ties in all areas. So we've seen this closeness. These two nations were at odds 35, 40 years ago. They were complete odds with one another. And now they're close allies. About this, we see this from Business Insider. Russia signs agreement with another African nation to rebuild railways and airports. What nation? Sudan. Again, we see Sudan right here as part of this alliance. How about this? From the Heritage Foundation, Russia's Libya push should alarm the United States and Europe, meaning Russia is moving into Libya and building strong ties with the government in Libya and trying to, again, get access to the Mediterranean Sea, the same as they're doing in Syria through Libya, have a naval base there. About this, Turkey has become Russia's second largest trading partner. And then we had this from the AP. Russia hosts Taliban delegation and warns against foreign military presence in Afghanistan. So guys, we're seeing this over and over. We see all these ties coming together between this alliance that never in history of the world, have we seen this alliance of nations come together. We're seeing them come together right before our eyes. And again, we've talked about with what's happening in Gaza, everything that's happened since October 7th, 2023, Israel has made it clear their policy is a commitment to eliminate the existential threats on its borders. And I believe that's why we aren't going to see this ceasefire with Gaza last. We're going to see Hamas completely rooted out, Hezbollah completely rooted out, all these existential threats eliminated, and create the sense of peace and the tranquil state that we read about in Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 11, that it says Israel will be found in when they're caught off guard by the surprise invasion of this coalition of nations. So we're seeing it on the side from both from the angle of Israel moving toward the state of defeating the threats on its border and thinking it's in a state of peace, finding itself in a state that it has not been in since 1948. And at the same time, we're simultaneously seeing all these Gog of Magog alliance nations come together, forming greater ties with each other, cooperating in military matters, economic matters. And guys, this is setting the stage for the Gog of Magog invasion that happens in the latter days. I believe this is a pre-tribulation event. I don't know one way or another whether the rapture occurs before or after this event. I tend to think that the rapture will occur before this event, but I could be wrong on that. But guys, it's just one more sign of the times in which we live. Look at all the signs around us. This is just one of many. There are so many. We've been over all these signs. And Jesus said, when you begin to see these things take place, know that I'm near. I'm right at the door. He says, look up. Your salvation draws near. Guys, this is telling me Jesus is close. The 7-year tribulation is close. That means the rapture of the church is even closer, because I believe that happens before the 7-year tribulation. But guys, all of these events are very near. That's what Jesus himself tells us when he says, look up, I'm right at the door. So guys, let me know what you think. Leave your comments below. And God willing, I'll see you on Friday.